20 minutes after our HOA president dialed 911 to report, quote, a suspicious woman with visible luggage, unquote, she was handed her own eviction notice by a woman in yoga pants, wedding ring glinting, caramel macchiato in hand. That woman? My newlywed wife. The responding officer was her cousin. The charge against our HOA president: housing code violations in her own property. My name is Kenorby Ale, and at 39, I thought I'd found Fideal starter home in Pine Needle Acres. That it was a charming fixer-upper in a quiet neighborhood with more decorative mulch than actual people. And an HOA that seemed frozen in 2007. Lawns were so manicured you'd think each blade of grass was measured with a ruler. I should have known something was off when their altar mentioned the HO fees with Thiessen Dredd as a dentist, describing a root canal. The HOA was run by Margot Renfroot, a woman in her mid-50s who greeted her bleached hair with more devotion than most people give their children. She carried a clipboard of Verrier, clutching it like a holler relic, and patrolled the streets in Agolf. Cart she'd named the compliance cruiser. I wish I was joking. She had the name painted on the side in Comic Sans, which somehow made it worse. In me first month, she fined me twice. First for mailbox tilt, apparently leaning 2 degrees past the standard. Second for non-regulations fillers in my front garden. I didn't even know sunflowers could bend in regulation. Then I did something truly scandalous in Margot's eyes. I fell in love. My girlfriend Renee and I had been together 2 years and decided to take the next step. We got married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. When I told Margot, she asked if I'd submitted the proper paperwork to the HOA relationship committee. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. When Renee officially moved in last Tuesday, Margot lost her grip on reality. She showed up within an hour of the moving truck, clipboard in hand, face full of scandal. She claimed Renee hadn't been approved by the HOA Residency Council, which, as far as I could tell, didn't exist. She explained that couples were subject to cohabitation compatibility vacantia, and that we'd violated Section 12.4 of the Neighborhood Guidelines. I asked to see Section 12.4. She flipped through her papers, then said it was in the updated bylaws that hadn't been distributed yet. The mental gymnastics required for that could have won her Olympic gold. Renee, bless her, just smiled and offered Margot coffee. Margot declined, saying she didn't accept beverages from unapproved residents. The harassment began immediately. Margot started slipping notes under our door at all hours. The first read: marriage certificates must be submitted to the HOA in writing with 30 days notice. The second claimed, HOA bylaws strongly discourage impulsive domestic mergers without proper committee oversight. My favorite was the note that simply said, 2 toothbrushes spotted in master bathroom. Please explain. I started keeping them in a folder labeled Exhibit. Things escalated on Friday when Renee came home from work with 2 suitcases from her old apartment, her cat Mr. Whiskers, and a new welcome mat that read, "Come back with tacos." She wore her favorite yoga pants and carried her usual caramel macchiato. Within 10 minutes, I watched from the window as Margot frantically dialed 911. She reported, and I quote, "a possible squatter with soft luggage and excessive throw pillows who may be conducting illegal cohabitation actus." She actually used the phrase illegal cohabitation actus. She described Renee as a suspicious female with beverage and feline accomplice. I couldn't make this up if I tried. The officer arrived 15 minutes later. Sergeant Lacey Trout stepped out of her patrol car with the calm of someone who's handled too many ridiculous calls. What Margaret didn't know was that Sergeant Trout was Renee's cousin and a stickler for actual laws, not HOA nonsense. Margaret rushed up with a printed notice of unauthorized matrimony, waving it like evidence. Sergeant Trout looked at the paper, then at Margot with an expression of professional exhaustion. She said, "Ma'am, do you have a license to harass these people?" Margaret spluttered about HOA, authority, and community standards. That's when Renee walked outside, still sipping her lat with the calm of someone holding all cards. "Funny thing about that side deck you built last year," Renee said, smiling. She handed Sergeant Trout a manila folder that looked official. "Remember how you said permits were just government overreach? Well, I work in code enforcement for Madison County, and I have some concerns about your property." The color drained from Margot's face. Turns out my wife hadn't her homework. She had receipts, photos, and documentation going back 3 years. Margot hadn't just built an unpermitted deck, she'd constructed an entire sunroom, rerouted drainage in violation of 5 county ordinances, and installed an electrical sub-panel without inspection. Sergeant Trout cross-referenced the county records on her patrol car's computer. Within minutes, she confirmed every violation. She turned to Margot with the satisfaction of serving real justice and handed her an official notice of violation. Margot would need to vacate her property until repairs were made and permits obtained. Margot's reaction was something to see. She sputtered and shrieked, clipboard falling as she gestured wildly. She tried to invoke something called Section 12, Paragraph Emotional Distress, as if the county code had a feelings clause. Her voice reached a pitch that had dogs barking 3 houses down. But it was no use. The law was the law, and unlike HOA laws, these had real consequences. Neighbors began to gather. People who'd suffered under Margot's reign for years stood on their lawns, watching with barely concealed glee. Bob from 2 houses down started a slow clap, which his wife quickly stopped with an elbow. The schadenfreude was thick enough to cut with a knife. Margot stormed back to her house, heels clicking like angry typewriter keys. But at her door, she found a bright orange notice already nailed to it. Renee's efficiency was impressive. The building inspector, apparently on standby, was already taking photos. That evening, Renee and he sat on our fully permitted porch, enjoying margaritas and the sunset. The sound of Margot angrily packing boxes drifted across the neighborhood like music. Within 3 days, an emergency HOA meeting was called in Bob's garage. Since Margot's house was off limits, the vote to remove her was unanimous. Even her allies abandoned her, maybe sensing the change or just tired of her tyranny. Her brass nameplate, mounted on mahogany, was ceremonially dropped into the recycling bin. Someone took a photo for posterity. The consequences for Margot were severe. The county fined her $35,000 for unpermitted structures and code violations. The cost to fix everything was another $20,000. Her reputation was ruined, and word spread fast through town social media. She had to take out a second mortgage just to pay fines and repairs. Her face when she got the final bill was a mix of shock, rage, and the realization that she brought this all on herself.